This is the Reluctant Leader Podcast, the podcast designed to help you if you've landed a leadership role through no fault of your own and now need to find out what you should be doing. I'm your host, Mark Terrell, and have been there and know what it feels like and made all the mistakes. In each episode, I'll be getting to grips with a leadership topic by interviewing an expert in their field. You'll find out why they do what they do and take away some top tips you can use to become a more confident leader. For more content and to keep in touch with how the project is developing, go to www.thereluctantleader.co.uk. If you have any comments about the episode, you'll find me on LinkedIn, Facebook and Twitter. So let's crack on with the show. Today I'm talking to Greg Cooper. Greg is a LinkedIn coach and trainer and an award-winning marketer. After a career in tech marketing, Greg started up his LinkedIn training business in 2011. He works with small and mid-sized businesses from 1 to 300 employees to help them use LinkedIn to increase their visibility and find new customers. He runs regular public courses in Bristol, which attract people from London, the Midlands and the South Coast, as well as the local area. He also provides bespoke in-house courses and one-to-one sessions. Greg says he feels extraordinarily lucky to be working with such a diverse range of businesses and charities and inspiring business people. I hope you enjoy this chat we had about LinkedIn, and I'll catch you all on the other side. So Greg, welcome to the Reluctant Leader Podcast.
Thanks, Mark. I'm very glad to join you.
I've been looking forward to this for some time because you're a busy person and you haven't had much time in your diary. So I'm glad we got round to this eventually.
Yes, I'm sorry I've been so elusive.
No problem at all. But so before we get stuck into the topic, the question I always ask my guests is, why do you do what you do, and what was the pivotal moment that took you down this path?
Okay. Well, for many years, for over 20 years, I ran a marketing agency working with big organizations in the IT sector. So it was a tech marketing agency. And I realized what I really loved. I loved working in that industry. It was always new. There was always new technology to learn and learn how to communicate about. And so I realized that actually I love learning, and I love learning new stuff. And then in 2011, I sold that agency, and I kind of had some time off, and I wondered what I'd do next. And I realized that it was this passion to keep learning that was driving me. And I decided as I'd already done some training, I'd do some social media training, and specifically focused on LinkedIn because we'd used that quite extensively in the agency. So that's why I decided to focus on LinkedIn. The other aspect is, if I have a particular talent, I think my talent is encouraging people, and I've always enjoyed encouraging people, and so that sort of fits in rather well with this thing about learning new stuff as well. So that's when I set up the LinkedIn training back in 2011.
Okay, so quite a simple sort of process and journey that brought you to this place. And so we're talking about LinkedIn today, as the listeners will be expecting us to. So where do we start with LinkedIn then? When people think about LinkedIn, it's a social media platform. And you get a lot of people at the moment sort of comparing LinkedIn with all the, with Facebook and all that sort of stuff. So someone that's fairly new to LinkedIn, how should they actually treat it? That's the thing. How should they? What's the mindset around LinkedIn? What would you suggest?
Okay. Well, I think the key thing with LinkedIn is, the important thing is, it is, of all the social media, it's regarded as a professional platform. And people trust what they read on LinkedIn in a way that they don't necessarily trust what they read in Facebook and on Twitter. So it's very much the professional platform, and people use it in three ways, really. They use it to network as a networking tool, which has tremendous power to do that. They use it to keep them informed of what's happening in their industry, and they also use it clearly to look for job opportunities. Which is a big part of LinkedIn for many people too.
Yes, and I think a lot of people up until recently have treated LinkedIn as a place where you post your CV, but it's become more of that now, isn't it? And it's about connecting the right people. And so I suppose the big question is, when you're on LinkedIn, who should I connect with, and what's the criteria around that? What would your advice be around connecting with people?
Yeah, sure. Well, I mean, LinkedIn at heart is a networking platform, and it's really all about building relationships. So business has always been about networking and building relationships, but until LinkedIn came along, those networks were kind of invisible. But the genius of LinkedIn is it made them all visible. So, and I've forgotten your question now.
It's just who we should connect with.
Oh, yeah, who we should connect with. Yeah, brilliant. So you want to build your own network of people who are relevant to you, people, in simple terms, people to whom you can add value and people who can add value to you. So that will include people like your target audience, the people that you want to do business with. It also includes people like your peers that you can learn from, colleagues and partners and collaborators. And it includes people who perhaps fit none of those categories, but just add value to your network. So perhaps you're connected to an accountant who shares, you don't need an accountant, but this accountant you've found on LinkedIn shares really useful stuff that you don't know about. So it's all about value, really, adding value.
Yeah, I must admit that when I'm on there, there's lots of information. You can quite easily get lost in all of it, but there is some great posts there. People are quite creative now on LinkedIn and really have a way of getting some information out there, which is really useful. And I think that's a useful thing to move on to, is about information, how we put stuff out there. So if I'm a business leader and my time's a bit short, what should I be posting about to get the people to see what what message I want to get out there?
Yeah, sure. I think the thing to remember as a business owner or business leader is that you are the face and the voice of the business. So it's really important that you're out there being well represented and active on LinkedIn. Ideally, you should be posting regularly and writing articles, positioning yourself and your organization as experts in their area and thought leaders. So the sort of things to be posting about, you could be addressing issues that your audience has. It can be industry issues, or it can be very specific issues for your particular audience. Mm-hmm. Talking about topical things, giving your point of view as an expert in that particular area.
Right. Yes, and there's obviously lots of ways we can do that in written formats or audio, maybe. But I've noticed that on LinkedIn recently, there's more and more videos, and it's something that I'm getting doing more of in my posts. Is that what you're seeing? Are you seeing that video is becoming more and more important in what you put out there?
Yeah, definitely. Video is huge, and it's huge on LinkedIn. I mean, there are a number of people that are using LinkedIn now, video, and they're getting massive sort of traction with that. They're getting 200,000, 300,000, 400,000 people watch their videos, and they're getting a couple of thousand people commenting and engaging with those videos. I mean, not everyone's going to achieve that kind of level, but Video is very easy to digest. People like video. We're used to seeing moving images. We relate to it. And just like on Facebook, video is the most popular format on Facebook.
Yes, and I think it's what draws us in, isn't it? Watching a video has a little bit more about it, and actually, it's a great way for people to get to know you, isn't it? If they've never met you, watching you on a video is almost the next best thing, isn't it?
Well, I think that's a really important point, Mark, because once people have seen you and heard you in a video, it feels like they've actually met you. Mm. So that's, I'm not saying that we shouldn't be doing other sort of posts. Of course we should. Yeah. But video has a sort of rather unique way of strengthening that relationship and breaking down those barriers for someone that you haven't met.
Yeah. And I have noticed recently there's some people been talking about like automating our posts. It's been out there a lot on other social media platforms.
Yeah.
Is that the sort of thing that's happening on LinkedIn? Are you seeing that?
Yeah, I gather it's happened a lot on Instagram. I don't know about Facebook, but certainly also there are a number of companies out there. They tend to be very small software companies that have come up with a bit of code that enables people to do things like automatically endorse someone or automatically send invitations out there. They're all against the LinkedIn user agreement, and they all carry a very big risk that if LinkedIn identifies you're using one of those products, then it will either restrict you or it will completely strike you off. So you're putting your network at risk, you're putting your account at risk, but also, it's bad practice because how can you automate relationships? Relationships built one at a time, and LinkedIn is a relationship building platform. That's the whole essence of it. And there is no way to kind of shortcut that satisfactorily.
Yeah, I was just going to say that. I think that we're tempted by things that are going to shortcut a process, aren't we? And anything that can do that. But when you really think about it, is it ever going to be effective? In that, do we actually, as human beings, respond to that sort of thing? And actually, I expect most people can tell what's going on a mile off, can't we?
Yeah, I think in most cases you can tell if you've received some sort of automated message from a person. Yeah.
Okay, so I think so that's a little bit of a negative thing around LinkedIn, and obviously something to be aware of. But what we really need to talk about is how someone in a leadership position can make the most of LinkedIn. And you've sort of mentioned about obviously connecting with potential clients, also about getting our message out there, and also I suppose another way of using LinkedIn is to also think about advertise things that are coming up for us, isn't it? It's almost like that, this is what we're doing, and attract people to something that's happening in the future. I've seen that happen a lot. Yeah,
I mean, promoting an event or something that you're working on. Yeah, and actually, LinkedIn are introducing an events feature, which I'm currently on the pilot program for that, and I've been using it to promote my LinkedIn local events, which have worked pretty well actually with the LinkedIn feature. There are some flaws with it, but they will hopefully be introducing that, rolling it out to everybody in the next couple of months.
Oh, right. That's interesting. I didn't know that. So that's something that they obviously realise is an important part of LinkedIn. And I'll be looking forward to hear a bit more about that. That's an interesting development. And I suppose that they are developing it in lots of ways. Is there any other things that you want to share that that are in the pipeline at this time that might be we might see in the future?
Well, there is a rumour, and I've seen some evidence that LinkedIn are trying to refine the notifications box a little bit, so that that it could end up being, instead of just one stream of notifications, you have a number of tabs where you can decide which of the notification types you want to look at. LinkedIn have also been trying to help people to grow their company page followers, and they've introduced a couple of features recently. One is where you connect with somebody on the point of connection, that there's a little prompt now, would you like to follow this person's company page? Which I think is a really good idea.
Yes, I've noticed that.
Yeah, but unfortunately, they introduced another feature there where they started to allow people from their company page to invite their connections to follow the company page. And what happens, of course, quite predictably, is that those people that had that feature just blasted all of their connections. Yeah. And so everybody was sort of inundated with these company page follow invitations. So they realised their mistake, and they've actually temporarily withdrawn that while they redesign it.
Yeah. But so that's a great follow-up, because one of the questions I was going to ask you about, those personal pages, which most of us have got. So how important is it for us to have company pages as well as personal pages?
Yeah. Well, company pages are important from a credibility point of view. For bigger companies, they're fantastic because they use them for recruitment. They get enormous followings. But for mid-sized and smaller businesses, it's really hard to get any traction on a company page, partly because we relate to people, we don't relate to logos. So most company pages get very, very little engagement on them. But I think the best way to think about a company page is it's good for building awareness. So it's certainly good to keep posting there. Even if you're a one-person business, it's still worth having a company page. It's free. It takes about half an hour to set up. And you only need to really be posting once a week or a couple of times a month just to keep the whole thing active. But in terms of what really works on LinkedIn, it's the personal page, the personal network, where the real power is. So that's where you engage with your network. The company page is never going to be creating lots of opportunities for you.
Yeah. Yeah, I was going to actually, it's something that come to mind actually about, I think when you're busy, the temptation is to delegate the responsibility to post things to somebody else. And I suppose that lends itself quite well to the company page, but I guess not so well with a personal page.
Yeah, sure. I read a number of articles a few years back by Richard Branson, who was very critical about other chief executives that never get involved with their social media and they just sort of completely delegate it to their PAs or a marketing person. And it was very much an advocate that you need to be involved, you need to be engaged. And I see lots of sort of owners and leaders in small, medium-sized businesses particularly, who kind of are reluctant to get involved. But I think it's so important because that person is the person who owns the vision of the business, who can best articulate what the business is about, whose job it is to actually go and inspire their staff and inspire their customers to use the business. So I really encourage people in sort of senior positions to embrace LinkedIn and to start posting, to write some articles, to become active and to engage on it, to get involved in the conversation. Saw a brilliant example the other day. There was a post by a lady who had an accident, unfortunately, on a motorway. She pulled onto the hard shoulder. Another car had come up behind and smashed into the back of her. Fortunately, she and her children who were in the car were okay. But she was just posting about it, saying how important it is to make sure you've got your seatbelts on, or ideally even leave the car when you break down on the motorway. And there was a comment in there from the chief executive of Ford in the UK. And this guy was saying, look, really sorry to see that you've broken down there and had that really bad crash. So glad that you're okay. Yeah. If you need a vehicle right now before the insurance is sorted out, let me know.
Wow.
So it can be very powerful when senior people get involved.
Yes, and that's really positive, and that's a great story. I have to actually say, but I've seen also people using it the other way around, isn't it? When they're a bit disgruntled, then I'm not sure whether it should be used for it. But I've seen people, venting their frustration with a supplier on LinkedIn. And I suppose that's the other way of using it, which is probably not quite so positive.
Yeah, I mean, for me, that's a little unprofessional. If you've got a problem with a supplier, you should really be directly addressing that with them, not broadcasting on LinkedIn. To be honest, I see very, very little of that. I mean, I've been on LinkedIn since 2006, and I haven't had a negative or rude comment or interaction in all that time.
Oh, that's great. Yeah, I'm personally, I'm the same, but there are some people that see the opportunity to get a message out there to a wide audience. They've probably got lots of connections and think that everyone's going to see it. And I think that's something to actually think about. Actually, when you've got a lot of connections, how does it work to get your message? How many of those people are likely to see your posts? Do you know what that? Likely
at any given time, it's around about somewhere 4 to 5% of your network will see your post.
Right. Right, that's something to bear in mind, isn't it? So I suppose in that respect, if you want everyone to see it, then if you really want them to see something you're putting out, you've got to put the same post out, say 20 times. I suppose that sort of cuts down the likelihood they're going to miss it. I suppose, but that's probably taking it a bit too far.
20 separate posts out.
Yes.
Over time, we'll put posts out that are really interesting, so that lots of people like it and engage with it. Therefore, if people are engaging with the post, then the LinkedIn algorithm will start to give it a boost and turbocharge it, so it gets to be seen by many more people.
Right. Yeah. And that's worth mentioning, actually, isn't it? If we like something, or we see something that's worth that we want other people to see, what's the best thing to do there? Is it best to just like it, or actually we've got more options now? We can love it and we can applaud it and all sorts of things, can't we? So what's the best way to react to something that you see is actually that you want your network to see?
Comment on it.
Right.
Comments are the gold standard. Comments are what the algorithm takes the most notice of. One of the things that LinkedIn is looking for is authentic conversations. So if you've got a post and a conversation is developing on that post, not just great post comments, but comments that sort of start to build into a conversation, the algorithm will recognize that and it will give the post credit for that. That's one of the factors that it takes into account. Because if you think about it, what LinkedIn want is for us to have a really interesting time when we're on their platform. They don't want us to have a boring time because we'll go away. So it's looking for those posts that are engaging, that are interesting and that are relevant. And those are the posts it wants to show to us because it wants to capture and keep our attention.
Yeah, and that's a good point, actually, isn't it? It's realizing, like you started off, it's a networking, it's a social platform, and to remember that, and when we see things, and there is some great content on LinkedIn, and some real creativity I see now, but and if we want other people to see it, so comment on it, and then that means that your network is more likely to see it, isn't it? So then it spreads out from there. It's almost like a spider's web, I guess, isn't it? Yeah.
Well, I mean, the purpose of the post is to create a conversation. That should be your goal in posting something on LinkedIn.
Yeah.
And I think the other side of that is that it can be as valuable to comment on other people's posts, because every time you comment on someone's post, it takes your little byline appears. So you can gain as much visibility by commenting on someone else's post that's popular and putting a thoughtful comment on that as you can by posting your original post. I'm not saying you should just comment, but it's a balance, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. And it's a good job you point that out, because we haven't mentioned it so far, but we've all got our own bios or we've got our own pages. And there are different sections of that, isn't there? And it's important to get those right, isn't it? To make sure that we've got the right information in there. So how do we break that down into to what we should be putting into those sections? Yeah,
so your personal profile is really important. It's a critical part of LinkedIn. It's part of your credibility. It's important, some of the basics to get a decent photo there. Not to have a photo of you swigging wine or stroking your dog or in your wedding uniform. This is a serious business platform. It should be a nice headshot, friendly, professional. You should use the background image at the top of the profile is your visual hook. So, that's an opportunity to use something that sucks people, draws people in. Then you've got underneath your photo, you've got a line there, which defaults to your job title. But actually you can use that because it's prime real estate right at the top of the profile. You can use that to put a positioning statement in there. So, for example, one of my connections is a sales trainer, had a profile headline that went, I teach business people who think they can't sell to make more sales. Right. Really snappy, and tells straight away what he does. And then, so getting the top of the profile is really important. Getting that right is really important, because then that encourages people to read the next section, which LinkedIn have recently retitled as About. That's effectively your summary section. One of the things I see a lot with senior business owners and leaders is surprisingly, people are putting stuff in there that makes it look like they're looking for a job. And,
Right.
and think, well, but you own the company. Well, why are you putting all this in there? So that really needs to be about the business. It needs to be positioning the business. What does the business do? Who does the business serve? What's unique about the business? What geographical areas is it working? If you're the business owner, you can talk a bit about your vision, what led you to start the business, the vision that is taking you forward, where you'll be going next. So the about section is a really important section there. People often ask me, what should I do? Where should I talk about me? And really the place to talk about you is, apart from mentioning your role a little bit in the about section, is primarily done in the experience section. And that's where you can talk in much more depth about what your role is.
Yeah.
So the other aspects, I suppose, are to point out briefly on the profile are social proof. There's an endorsement section where people can endorse you for specific skills that you've chosen to put on your profile. But also, very importantly, I think more importantly, is the recommendations, because the recommendations are independent, objective. Someone sat down for 15 minutes and wrote something about what it's like to work with you, or what you're like to work with as a supplier. So that's really important. So I think those are the most important parts of the profile, without talking for another half an hour about it.
Yeah, I think you summed it up really well. But I think you've mentioned about endorsements and testimonials, which are really important. And what I'd tell people that are new to the workplace is to firstly to join LinkedIn as soon as possible, and then treat it almost as if it's almost like a live CV. So in other words, as they learn things and how they experience things, and as they obviously move jobs, it can be a great place to actually have a CV that's constantly being updated, and it's up to date and live almost. And would you agree with that sort of?
Absolutely. You can add additional sections to your profile, particularly things like accomplishments. So if you do courses, then they can be added on there, and it all builds a picture up. I think it's also really important what you're suggesting, also that this is not a do once and forget. This is, on your profile, you should be coming back to it every sort of 3 months or so, updating it, making sure it still reflects what you're doing. Perhaps your ideas have changed, perhaps your role has changed, etc.
It's very much like a website, isn't it? Websites. The people that talk about websites that do them all the time say that a website should never be finished, and I suppose that's the same with the LinkedIn profile. It's always constantly evolving, isn't it?
Well, it's an interesting point, Mark, actually, because I think for smaller and medium-sized businesses, almost your LinkedIn profile can be more important than the website because it's getting more eyeballs.
Yeah, absolutely. And for me personally, I think that's definitely the case. People see my LinkedIn profile probably before my website. So it's more important to keep it up to date and relevant and keep evolving and learning from people like you that know your stuff because it's a moving platform. Things are always changing, like any social media. It's adapting to what people want. And people, as they see that we need, and obviously competing with other platforms, I suppose that's always going on, isn't it, to make it more relevant and more attractive. So that's all great. But I think what I picked up from our conversation is that when you're in a leadership position, rather than talking about yourself so much, it's an opportunity that you can talk about what you do, how you do it, and most importantly, why you do something, and that vision thing. Get that message across. And even if, I've had some clients that come from a non-for-profit charity background, and that's really important to get that message across, isn't it? To attract people in many ways, people that want to come and maybe work with you, or maybe sponsor you, or invest in you, and all those sort of things. And that's the thing that attracts people. It's not so much about what you do, it's about why you do it, isn't it?
Yeah. I mean, it's interesting. Sometimes I'll read someone's summary on their profile, and then it's okay. And then I'll talk to them. And in conversation, that they talk in the most passionate and inspiring way about what they do. And I think, stop. This should be in your LinkedIn profile.
Yes.
This is what people want to know. This is what they want to read.
Yeah, and it is funny, isn't it, how we are almost reserved in the fact that, we think that we have to conform to a certain, thing when we go onto these sort of platforms. But actually, the more human we are, the better, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, it's about being human. Okay, well, thank you for your time today, Greg. Unfortunately, time is rapidly running out. And as you know, I prompted you beforehand. We like to leave the the audience and listeners, I should say, with some top tips. So what would be those 3 top tips to take away from our conversation, and how can people get the most out of the LinkedIn platform?
Yeah, well, I'd say, first of all, work on your personal brand. If you're a senior leader or manager in a business, you're one of the custodians of the brand's message and vision. So your LinkedIn profile really needs to be expressing that. So secondly, I'd say invest time in building a relevant network. And one of the great things with LinkedIn is you get to build your own custom audience. So that will include people you want to do business with, partners, collaborators, as well as people who you personally feel add value to your online life. Mm. So, and then the third thing is, I think, really be active and involved. Join the conversation. Don't delegate your LinkedIn activity. It doesn't have to take that long. 10 minutes a day. We've all got dead time. You can get the mobile app. You can be doing stuff on the mobile app while you're waiting for a meeting to start. Just keep active. Yeah, brilliant. Super stuff. So thank you for your time again, Greg. It's been really informative, as I expected it to be. And until we meet again, hopefully in person, I should say, in real life, rather than on online. Have a great day. Catch up soon. Thanks again for inviting me, Mark. It's been a pleasure. Thank you. Thank you for listening to this episode. If you enjoyed it, please take a moment to leave a review. Don't forget to check out the Reluctant Leader project at www.thereluctantleader.co.uk. Make a note to start, stop or continue doing whatever struck a chord in this episode. And until next time, be the best you can be.